Joining us for Primetime Local News is Christy Lavin with the Alberta Council of Women's Shelters. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. And now we're speaking about the Lift Her Up campaign. Can we start off with you telling us what this is and how it became to be?
Well, the Lift Her Up campaign started at a 2016 rally that was held at the legislature of approximately 1,000 people protesting the carbon tax. And they were chanting, lock her up, referring to then Premier Notley. And recognizing the links between the abuse of women in domestic and political spheres, Alberta shelter directors at the time launched Lift Her Up in response. And it started off with a campaign commitment for the 2017 municipal election that included a follow-up survey of candidates.
How would you say that response and reaction has been so far to this year's campaign?
Yeah, it's been awesome. I mean, first of all, what a campaign. Historic numbers of women voted across the province. So that was really exciting to see. And I think during the Lift Her Up campaign this year, 195 candidates from around the province signed on to the commitment, committing to conducting a violence-free issues-based campaign, which is about a third of all candidates that we originally approached. So great numbers and comparable to what we saw in 2017. There were many great conversations informally that we had with candidates who just followed up to ask us about it, to learn more about the connection to violence against women, and to hear about the amazing work that shelters do in communities around the province.
And I understand that ACWS recently released a research report on women in politics. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, so exciting. So from the 2017 post-election survey about candidate experiences, we conducted a series of focus groups and interviews with women from all levels of political office to find out more about their experiences that they would characterize as violent, and to see if they resonated with us in terms of what we know about gender-based violence and abuse. And we conducted a number of these over a number of years, and we found out that they did, that the experiences of women in political office very much were gendered in nature. And they reflected all around the power and control wheel. They mirrored common tactics employed in abusive relationships.
Would you be able to expand a bit more on what the similarities are between domestic violence against women and violence against women in politics?
Yeah, so for an example, on the original power and control wheel by the Duluth, which is a model that we use a lot in our sector to explain coercive controlling violence and how different tactics of abuse are used in different relationships at different times. It's not just physical, right? It's emotional, it's spiritual, it's psychological, it's many factors. So one of the tactics that's used in the domestic violence wheel is intimidation, for example. So making her afraid by using looks, actions, gestures, destroying property, displaying weapons, all ways of intimidating her into submission. Okay. So what we found in our research, the political side of that is that yeah, it happened all the time, making her afraid by using looks, gestures, actions in council, in meetings, at the legislature, destroying property like campaign signs, physically intimidating her by standing over her, cornering her in some instances. It was really surprising. Ignoring her or speaking over her in meetings. So all of these are ways of intimidating her into submission and silence. So it absolutely mirrors those in violent relationships. A public example actually of that is, the famous example is former US President Trump on the debate stage with Hillary Clinton in 2016 and how he physically stood in front of her. That's another great example. Another element would be isolation. So limiting outside involvement, cutting her off from friends and family. That's also been reflected in political office.
And after seeing the success and support so far for this Lift Her Up campaign for this year, what's next for the project?
The next phase is to work with local parity groups and other organizations to create a positive flip of this wheel, an equity and accountability wheel for women in political office. The objective is to have a tool for campaign schools, but also for us bystanders out there, so we can recognize this size of violence in women in political office and know how to help. And we also need to be able to pull more contemporary, statistically valid sample sizes of women who not only experience abuse because of their gender, but also because of other intersections, race, culture, if they're identified as a member of the 2S LGBTQ+ community. All these ways layer on top of each other and just exacerbate the violence. So we need to learn more about that so that we can better equip women and support them.
For people wanting to find more information and of course wanting to support this campaign, where can they access it online?
Yeah, we have a women in leadership page on our website, www.acws.ca. And just, we had a great election. Just do what you can to support women who are elected. Pay attention to what's going on and what they experience. A lot of women in the study remarked that there were amazing men in their professional spheres and public spheres who stood up for them, who noticed these kinds of violence and who said, this is not okay. And I stand behind her, even when it wasn't, politically correct, and win points for doing so.
Well, I think this is a really amazing campaign. I'm glad to see there is such strong support for women, especially in politics, that people may not realize how much of an issue it actually is. Thank you so much for joining us today, Christy.
Thank you.